she was not in love with me anymore. She's looking at apartments and was probably going to move out soon. I did a lot of the wrong things at the beginning by being super husband right out the gate. Even those normal things I was doing before brought resentment. You have to be a little humble at first and take it on the chin. Have to get her to vent on you. I realized that getting her to understand me wasn't going to bring her back. It was getting her to, and that's where it kind of clicked. That's what the program was really about.
You just got to be coachable.
Men, the admission for today's video is only one thing. Press that like button, but more importantly for you, press the subscribe button. Make sure after you hit the subscribe button that you do change those settings to all. I don't want you to miss one single video that could actually help you save your marriage. David's in a remote location today, so for that reason, we can't show his face because the bandwidth was not good enough on the internet, but he very much wanted to share his experience as he went through the Divorce Stoppers program. So whenever we met you, how did you end up finding me in the Divorce Stoppers program?
I believe it was through YouTube, some of your YouTube videos, the algorithm, searching out of desperation to find answers to my situation led me to some of your YouTube videos. And you go down the rabbit hole watching them, and then you want more. And the more I talked to your team, the more I was convinced that this was the program for me.
So when you found me on YouTube and then you ultimately ended up booking a call with the team, where were you at in your relationship and where were you at in your life?
So I was working a dead-end job, but it was a kind of job that'll run you into the ground. They don't care about you. So it's definitely probably bringing those type of things home with me. And then my wife at the time, she had just informed me that she was not in love with me anymore. She's looking at apartments and was probably going to move out soon.
So when she told you that she was looking for apartments, she didn't love you anymore, what happened from that point? Did you immediately say, I'm going to get my stuff together, I'm going to fix this? Or were you on a downward spiral like most people, feeling hopeless? It's very normal. Most of the men that we meet, they've lost 40 pounds in the last 3 weeks. Where were you at emotionally and maybe even spiritually?
So a little combination of both. I definitely did a lot of the wrong things at the beginning by being super husband right out the gate. Now that I'm being told that I'm being left, right? And that's, that we learned that actually hurts you if you do it in the wrong order. And then at the same time, I was doing a lot of good things like avoiding alcohol because I knew the type of avenue that can take you down if you get into a mental state like that and you add things like alcohol or even drugs into the equation. So I was handling that aspect of it really well, but I was also doing some of the wrong things.
So let's talk about some of the wrong things that you were doing to see if anybody else can relate to that. What were some of the wrong things that you were doing? And I guess another way to ask that, just kind of help you understand, like what I'd like to get out of this is share, what you were doing wrong. If you feel vulnerable and you're comfortable sharing that, but also in addition to that, and it could be the same thing, share for you what wasn't working to give you the life and the relationship that you wanted.
So some of the wrong things I was doing was like all of a sudden doing all the things she had asked before, going to the gym with her, even though she didn't want me to go with her. I started going on my own, getting back in shape, projects that she wanted done around the house, or she's not from the United States, so getting more interested in her culture. Those types of things, all of a sudden, I started doing them when things started hitting the wall. So, that, and like you say, that can trigger them to have some resentment. Now, all of a sudden, you're interested in doing these things. So those were some of the wrong things I was doing. The relationship, a lot of that was not knowing how to listen or on my end, then allowing other things in my life to negatively affect our relationship, like my job, some other relationships I have with friends, family, and then just not knowing how to really be a leader, to nip a lot of these things in the butt before they become real issues. Those are some of the things I learned that became kind of the catalyst for the relationship at the end.
Yeah, I love that you're saying that. And I love that you're saying that you learned how to hear other people. And a lot of times on this YouTube channel, you'll hear me say, if you really want to restore a relationship, it starts with the 3 Ps, which is positive, polite, and playful. And what we're really doing is we're not really starting with anything. Put in the comments right now if this is you, what I'm about to say. Right now, up until this point, you haven't been positive, polite, and playful. You've been the 3 Cs. You've been complaining, you've been criticizing, and you've been condemning. with maybe good intentions. I want her to be happy. I want us to be happy. I want her life to be happy. Let me do what I do as a man. Let's go in and fix this. Let me complain about what you're doing wrong. Let me criticize the mistakes that you're making. And let me condemn you for the leadership where you're now wanting out of the relationship. So what we're really doing in the 3 Ps is we're stop trying to get somebody else to see the errors of their ways. And we're doing what I like to say, give them permission to do the 3 Fs, which is to fail, fall, and I used to say up. I got to find a different word to say that, maybe come up with a different acronym because I feel like I'm supposed to stop saying the F word so much. So how do you let somebody fail, fall, and flub up? Oh, I guess we can keep it. Flub up. There we go. You replace that with a new habit. Everybody's like, well, how do you break a habit? Scientifically, it is, I think, virtually impossible from the research that I've done and the research that I've seen. How do you get rid of a bad habit? You replace it with a new one. And what is the first new habit? Positive, polite, and playful. But just because you're positive, polite, and playful, that can be a paradigm shift in itself. Just making the transition to replace complaining, criticizing, and condemning with positive, polite, and playful. You know, most of the sayings that we've been taught since kindergarten or preschool are bullshit. But the one thing that's not is if you don't have something nice to say to or about somebody, then don't say anything at all. That's one of the few things that we're told that actually is truthful. Well, how do you do that? How do you do that? Because all I see is their problems. I'm a Virgo, and Virgos by nature, I can walk in a room. It doesn't matter what it is, a shoe factory, a call center, a lunchroom. I can literally walk in 3 minutes and I see every problem with that business and know how to fix it and increase their profit margins just like that. And that's a blessing because that helps me see issues in a marriage when I'm a coach and in teaching. How do you psychologically lead somebody and change? Because if you don't see the problem, then you can't fix it. The problem with somebody that's in a relationship that's failing, their life is failing, they're not happy, they're not walking their anointing, they're in a dead-end job, they're not getting paid what they're worth, they're trading their time for money, that man or woman for that matter will always be miserable. But here's what's almost always the case. They're too close to their own situation to see their situation. And positive, polite, playful is what starts the evolution of being transformed by the renewing of your mind to give you the life and the relationships that you're supposed to have. Not just with your spouse, not just with your lover, but with everybody, starting with yourself. So what does that mean? Positive, polite, and playful. That's the turnaround where you start going the other way. But it requires that you see yourself also. And the way that you see yourself, you'll never see yourself. A wake-up call for everybody is to have the ability to see yourself in the reflection of somebody standing in front of you in their eyes. When you see yourself from that perspective, that shows you yourself in a way that you can change. At the same time, that evolution of being transformed by the renewing of your mind, it's not possible to see yourself until you can see that person. Well, how do you see that person? You start through communication. How do I make this person feel heard, valued, and seen? Heard, valued, and seen. When somebody feels heard, valued, and seen, well, what makes somebody feel heard, valued, and seen? Does the no contact rule make someone feel heard, valued, and seen? Put in the comments if you've done the no contact rule and if it worked or didn't work. Stick that in the comments right now. If you're a freshman in college and your girlfriend of 2 weeks dumped you, no contact, we'll bring her back. I promise you. Don't ask me how I know because I'm ashamed of it. Okay. But I have regrets around doing the no contact rule because it invited so many more women into my life back in the day when it shouldn't have. It's against my values today. But with that being said, there is something about making somebody else in front of you feel heard, valued, and seen because it helps you see yourself. And that type of communication builds intimacy and it makes people feel uncomfortable. And it does one of two things. When you start seeing somebody else that's in front of you, you'll eventually, after about 7 weeks, you should be able to see, is that person really a good person? 99 times out of 100, it is. Even right now, put in the comments right now, if you're looking at your wife and you're telling all your friends and your family that she left me and like she's a narcissist, she's an abuser, she's the bad person. Here's the thing. 99% of you are delusional and that's not the case. But here's the other thing. 1% of you are spot on. But you're never going to admit that and you're never going to feel comfortable walking away from that and getting your life back on track until you actually start making her feel heard, valued, and seen. Then you can identify, is this something I even want salvageable? Now, put in the comments right now, 100% of you, if I'm spot on, you want your marriage and your relationship restored. Every single person watching this video right now, that's what they want. That is the goal. The way that you do that is by seeing that person through communication, which is what? What steps in the program, in our paid program called Divorce Stoppers, what step is that? Step 1. We teach that the first week, and then we compound on understanding that and learning that as you go. The dead ends for you, as you start seeing, hearing, and value. Actually, before that, let's go back before that. For you, before you started step 1 in the actual Divorce Stoppers program, what else didn't work for you, if anything? So you kind of mentioned some logistical things, and you mentioned that you were making some changes, and those changes were making it worse because she resented the new you. And that was before we met you, correct?
Yep. Yep.
So just describe that just a little bit to see if that can land with anybody watching this video.
So I'll give an example. So I had a stepdaughter, and I'd always been involved with everything she was doing, helping out with a lot of things, school and stuff. And I think even those normal things I was doing before, as I continued to do them, were seen as like brought resentment, even still, because it was part of that whole image that I was working on, right? It still was part of it, even though that was something I had been doing before. So it doesn't even have to be new things. It can be continuing to do the right thing, can bundle into that as well. And I saw that, and it actually was something you advised. Like sometimes you have to be a bad dad for a little while to be a good husband. So you actually got to pull back on those things and start kind of, limiting it a little bit so that you don't have that resentment, working towards the long-term goal, which is to have the whole family back together.
Yeah, I'm glad that you bring that up. For anybody that's watching this video right now, if you can relate to anything that David is saying on this call, and for example, if you have children and now that your wife wants a divorce or she wants a separation and she's exiting the relationship, you all of a sudden have become father of the freaking year. And maybe you already were before, but it's even got more extreme. This is something I can tell you 100%. I've been doing this. I've been helping people restore their marriages, particularly right now. For this season, I'm only working with men. We're going to open that up to couples again, which is how we started all this in the next few weeks as a separate program. But put in the comments right now if you see that you have become dad of the year. And this is what I can tell you. For any of my men right now that have joined the Divorce Stoppers program because they want to restore their marriage, one of the requirements of marriage restoration is that you go through a season of being a shitty father, a shittier version of the father that you were, or stepfather, than you were before. And you're like, Denver, how could that be possible? Like, doesn't she see what she's doing to her own kids? Doesn't she see what she's doing to our kids? Partially, her brain is protecting itself. And in reality, she knows it, but she's justifying it for the greater good. She's justifying it for the greater good of the child. And this is what I mean right now. Part of the restoration process, and by the way, if you're not one of my students, this is not going to make sense, is it, David? That you have to be a shitty father at some point for at least several weeks if you want the relationship restored. Well, Denver, how can you, isn't that going to have emotional trauma if I don't support them the way I always have or the way that I am now, if I back off? Well, actually, it might. It could cause them to have a little bit of emotional trauma. It could hurt your children just a little bit with you backing off, and they might not feel quite as loved, and they might even feel just a little bit of rejection. But is it for the greater good to teach them how restoration works? It's not going to make sense if you're not one of my students on what does that mean, because the intention is actually to help those children come out on the other side equipped as adults. How do I navigate a successful relationship? How do I make sure I never enter a relationship that I wasn't supposed to be in to begin with? How do I make sure that if I do get in trouble in a relationship, that I do what's necessary to not just change myself, but to also lead the other person to change? And the process that you do that is you give those children permission to fail, fall, and flub up. And part of that requires that you back off and you're not there 24/7 dad of the year to make sure that they thrive and succeed in everything. Because what you actually will do is enable them to be raised
as an emotionally immature adult, a child that's now 30 years old that goes into their relationship causing relationship failure because they're immature emotionally, which by the way is normal. Emotional immaturity for my men when I meet them and for their wives, 100%. I think 100% of the time that's where everybody is. Why? Because nobody teaches us how to emotionally mature. And did you see that happen as you started becoming a shittier version of a stepfather? That it
Yeah.
gave your stepchild the opportunity to emotionally mature.
Yeah. And it's a perfect example, sidebar real quick, of why people on the outside looking in have a better perspective than somebody who's in it and have the emotions affecting their decision making and perspective. But yes, I saw a lot of that because the more I interacted with her after the fact, the more I saw her pulling back towards me. So it didn't make sense. But then I was able to, invest back into that effort that she was making toward me when I would see her.
Yeah.
And I think that was where a lot of ground was made as well.
Yeah, I love the words that you said when you said it makes sense, because in reality, it makes sense now because you've went through this process. But
Yep.
prior to the process, I probably, even when you started taking those steps to do what we're talking about right now, it was very uncomfortable because it literally doesn't make sense, because the whole world, our whole lives has told us, well, do it the opposite way, which if I'm paraphrasing what that means is do it the way that doesn't work for every single person in the world. And that's what I call aligning your actions with your feelings instead of aligning your actions with your goals. Put in the comments right now if you've been aligning your actions with your feelings because it's what you think you should do. It's what you think is going to get her to see you. It's what you think is going to change her heart. Put in the comments right now if you see that you've been doing that after you're watching this video and you realize that this is creating the life that I don't want. This is taking the train to hell faster. This is adding gasoline, but the things that I thought would work, but it's making the train called my life go to hell even faster. It's speeding it up. Put that in the comments right now. For anybody that you're struggling with what to do to fix your relationship, to fix your life, you've always felt since you were a child that God has a higher calling on your life, but you were so consumed with the goals and the inner vows that you had set for yourself, the detachments emotionally, the attachments emotionally, the childhood trauma that you think until that's resolved, you can't have the life or the relationship that you want. And you really believe that you have to go through counseling and therapy. And I'm not dogging counseling and therapy unless it's marriage counseling and therapy, because based on statistical facts, that's not in your best interest if you want the goal restored. But I can tell you this, if God has allowed you to go through some shit in your life, it's because he has a plan to use it. And the reason the Bible actually says to lean on your own understanding is it doesn't have to make sense to you today. How do you align your actions with your goals, which are always going to be the opposite of what you feel like you should do and the opposite of what you think you should do? If that's where you're at right now, put this in the comments, but also my video editor is going to do something. If you need a strategy session to turn your life around, if your life is going to hell in a handbasket and you have tried other programs, you have watched a million YouTube videos at this point, if you have become an addict to YouTube and you have been piled up on your couch for 6 weeks, aren't you ready to do something different? Because watching the YouTube videos is not going to change your life. You have to take action, no matter what your beliefs are. Even the Bible says that faith without works is dead. And there's a way to turn all this around, but you might be missing the strategy in order, the correct order and the correct timing to do just that. So right now I'm going to give you 2 free resources. On the left side of the screen, my video editor is putting up a screen where you can actually book. This is the 7th time I've ever done this in 2 years, where you can actually book a strategy session call with me or my team. And we'll kind of hear and figure out what is your exact circumstances that you're in right now. And is there a path to turn all of this around quickly? And so that's where you can book a call. If you're watching this on an iPhone and you can't scan the QR code on the left side of the screen, go to the description of the video and the comments, and we're going to have the link right there. It's literally going to say book a call. Click that link and book a call. We only have, I think, 20 slots open each week. So you're going to want to pause the video and go do that before all those slots fill up. In addition to that, if you want to take the next first step, so maybe you just scheduled the call, you paused the video, you scheduled the call, Also, I have some upcoming training for my subscribers only. So if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel and make a comment that, yes, I want the upcoming communication training that Denver's going to be doing in 3 days for subscribers only. Stick that in the comment sections when you're in there getting the link, and we'll make sure you get notified when I do that. This is literally going to be step 1 communication training only for my YouTube subscribers. So after you've done those 2 things, if you want another resource that you can take advantage of right now without waiting on your call or waiting on that upcoming training for our subscribers, scan the barcode that's on the screen, which gives you the opportunity to register for my free Marriage U-Turn Masterclass. I really should label that as a free masculine men's life U-Turn Masterclass. It's literally showing you the framework to take the first step to turning your life around, which coincidentally typically is also going to be a requirement if you're wanting your relationship or your marriage restored. Scan the QR code on the right side of the screen and you can register for the free Marriage U-Turn Masterclass. Or you can go to the comments, or the link is in the description and it literally says Marriage U-Turn Masterclass. Do all of those things as free resources right now. But let's go back to the turning point. So David, when you decided enough is enough, like I've got to do something different, I'm ready to change my life and every relationship in it. For you, what was the decision to change when you finally said enough's enough? I got to do something different.
Long nights alone, just thinking and thinking and thinking, and then watching the videos and kind of come to the conclusion, all right, yeah, it's time for help outside of my own initiative. What can somebody else bring to the table? Because maybe somebody knows something I don't.
Yeah. Everybody goes through that. Everybody goes through that. When I was going through it, I remember the day that I had that moment. Like it was a specific day and hour. I had been separated for about 3 months. I hadn't slept good in 3 months. And one day I literally was delusional. I thought it was kind of trauma for me, to be honest, because for me, for the first time in my entire life, I was sitting in a big old house, or big old condo rather, in Puerto Rico alone. There was nobody in that house but me. And I had to face the reality that I could hear a pin drop, and it did not feel good. I didn't know what to do with that loneliness. It wasn't solitude where I was taking advantage of it. It was loneliness, and it was literally the pit of hell for me. It was the lowest I had ever been in my life. And I say that because for me, it was coming out on the other side of chemo and radiation and cancer, stage 4. And for me to say that was worse than going through stage 4 cancer, it was that bad. And I think if that's where you're at right now, where you're like, you are literally just 7 days a week, people may know that you're doing this, may not, that you literally are just crying yourself to sleep. And because you just are so the Bible says hope deferred kills the heart. Hope had been deferred for me for 3 months at that point, and my heart was freaking crushed. I felt like I had for me personally, I had reoccurring thoughts of saying, I can't do it. But there was still something in me, that little voice that I'd heard since childhood of there's supposed to be more to your life. This is not the end. God still has a plan for your life. There's still purpose. There's a reason that you made it through stage 4 cancer when 3 doctors said you have 6 months to live. And I was just like, there's got to be something more. But I think because I didn't know what to do. My brain was starting to create a lie in my own mind. Women, when they leave their husbands or they want a divorce, almost if they get to the point that they actually leave, file a divorce, or actually move out, or you move out, 100% of the time that there's confirmation bias, which we teach step 1 of identifying that in the free Marriage U-Turn Masterclass. But for a man, he does the opposite. What he does is he goes into denial. His brain has to protect itself so he doesn't have an emotional breakdown and get admitted to a mental institution. And so to prevent himself from developing PTSD, his brain will start telling him this will fix itself. I'm going to wake up tomorrow and she'll send me a text message and she'll see me. Put in the comments right now if you know in your heart that if your wife could see you, like your heart, not visually, but if your wife could see your heart right now and what you're thinking about her and what you feel about her and what you feel about your life and the relationship, put in the comments right now if you know that if your wife could just see your heart, this would all be over. And so what happens is our brain knows that is actually the reality. It's really true because that is true. but put in the comments if she's not seeing you. And here's the thing. I thought if my wife ever sees my heart, it's going to get back to her through a friend or a relative where my heart is. And I'm going to get a text message that's nice, that's sweet. I'm going to get a text message that says, every day I would check my phone 20 freaking times. Is the text message coming that says, can we talk? Like a good talk, you know? But it never came. 100 days come and went, and it never came. And this is an analogy I give. I actually thought I was going to be driving down the freeway going to San Juan, because I live in Puerto Rico, and I was going to, hit a magical unicorn. My car would absorb it, and I would wake up the next day, and my wife would magically be next to me. And that's the way that my brain protected itself so that I didn't check out, because it didn't know what else to do. And the brain finds a way to protect itself. For a woman, right, you can see that her whole life is going to hell. She will do things to fuck up herself. She will do things to fuck up other people. She will fuck up her own children and be blinded to it. How? Confirmation bias will blind her to it so that she will damage her own life. The confirmation bias is how she protects her sanity. And there's a way to lead her out of that almost always if it is actually a genuinely good person, which is the majority of the time. But what actually was the moment that broke me was I had fell asleep from sheer exhaustion from not sleeping for 3 months, a little over 3 months. I fell asleep reading a book about 2 p.m. in the afternoon, and I did not wake up until 3 or 4 p.m. the next day. I had slept for over 24 hours. My body shut down because I wasn't functioning. And I woke up the next day and I had slept so hard. I forgot that I was in a divorce case. I forgot that I was separated. I forgot my wife had filed for a divorce. I literally woke up. I'll never forget this. I mean, it's the only time I can visually remember years ago when I went to pee. That I remember I woke up, I went to pee, I put the toilet seat down intentionally. And what makes me remember that moment is because the toilet seat was up. And I'd been like by myself, so I had no reason to put it down. And I was like, hell, I can't believe I left the toilet seat up. I remember thinking that. So I put the toilet seat down after I peed, because thinking my wife's there, I forgot I was separated. And I went upstairs to get me a drink of water in my kitchen. And I'm like, baby, where you at? And I picked up the phone to text her. And that's when it hit me like a freaking ton of bricks. Holy shit. I for just a moment, I had peace and I had my life back and my life was restored. And then I remembered, no, dude, you're still in hell. Put in the comments if you can relate to that, if you're currently in that season right now. So you make a decision to change. That day was the day I made a decision to change. And that's when I started actually taking action steps, because I finally admitted to myself everything I thought should work and could work and would work. And here's the thing. I was a marriage coach before all of this. So before cancer, my wife and I were marriage coaches with about a 96% success rate with couples, helping them restore their marriages when we did coaching with both of them as a couple. And now I find myself going through an unwanted divorce. I had never had a client or a student where she wanted a divorce and he wanted to save it, because the way that you restore those relationships is dramatically different than the way that you restore relationships when it's two people willing to work on it. It's a completely different walk psychologically. That was the day that I had the wake-up call. Was there a moment like that happened for you?
Yeah. When I realized, what the program really did, when you were talking earlier about trying to get her to see my heart, I realized that getting her to understand me wasn't going to bring her back. It was getting her to realize I understand her now. It was the only way. That, you teach how to see somebody, you say. And that's where it kind of clicked. That's what the program was really about. And you're not going to, convince her to come back. You got to show her that you understand her now. And that's kind of the day when everything pivoted in the program for me.
Let me ask you this. You enter step 1. Okay. I'm teaching you specific communication. In that step, the goal is to shift everything. The goal is a week. Most people achieve it in a week. I don't know if you did or not. I have to look at that. Did you achieve a turnaround in 7 days?
It took
or did it take longer for you?
Yeah, because she was in the process of doing a move, with finding the apartment and stuff. So she was very deliberately ignoring everything I was saying for a little while. And then she would allocate a very small period of time each day to respond to my communication. So it
Gotcha.
was a little
So-
difficult because she was limiting it.
So it took you a little bit more than 7 days. And one of the things that I tell everybody, we're fully transparent about this. You can't restore a relationship without communication, which is why no contact doesn't work. And for anybody watching this right now, you're thinking, well, my wife is not communicating with me. David can actually testify. We get a lot of students where the wife is mad and she's not talking to her husband, but we have a plan to attack that. It's the reason that the program includes live coaching, because we have things that you can do to push and prod and pull and take and give that can actually prompt her to open up. Now, a lot of times it's in anger, but the good thing is we teach you how to capitalize and use that anger to turn it around. And if you have somebody that in the beginning, they're not communicating with you at all, they're more resistant, it's going to take a little bit more than 7 days, but not much longer. As you start making those changes and you're turning the train around and you're walking in the right kind of masculinity that happens to be not the same kind of masculinity that Andrew Tate teaches, even though there's a little smidgen of that, of the red pill, a little smidgen of it. As you're making those changes for yourself, how did you start feeling differently as a man? And how did you see her responding to your new vision where you had an opportunity and eyes to actually see her?
So you have to be a little humble at first, and take it on the chin. Because like you said, you might have to get reactions that are either a lashing out or getting her to vent on you, which is found out is a good thing. Vent her problems on you, about you. So you have to learn to be a little humble at first. And that's difficult for pretty much everybody, I'm sure. Everybody has a hard time doing that. It doesn't come natural. So when you get to that phase, but you teach how to use it to your advantage or to the benefit of the marriage, and then you start seeing wins from that, it becomes easier to do it in the future because you know what the end picture looks like, even though looks horrible in the moment.
Yeah. Once your faith has been fulfilled, and it makes it easier to take the next step that doesn't make sense because you've seen that the first step that didn't make sense, it worked, right? You start seeing it work. It's not just me teaching you something. It's like Denver's giving you an action step inside the program. The other coaches are giving you an action step inside the program. You take the action step. What if I don't feel comfortable taking the step? That's why we have a support community called Iron Sharpens Iron. So when you get in a place in the beginning that you don't feel comfortable, you can go look at your other brothers in the group that took the step that didn't feel comfortable. And not only do you get to see the brother, but you get to see what was the result of them taking the step, which gives you the courage to go take the step. And I think something that's equally important that it does is, in addition to give you taking steps in the beginning that you feel like are difficult or they're uncomfortable, what it also does is it empowers your subconscious to know that if I'm in step 3 and I'm stuck, and everybody else is posting their success in step 3, then that empowers you to know I need to get support. I need to get on a coaching call because it's not the program, it's me. I'm doing something wrong, or my particular circumstances for that day based on where my wife is. Maybe I need to go out of order, which we sometimes recommend that, because that just makes sense, because we're dealing with humans. We're dealing with outside influence. We're dealing with enemies of the marriage. If you have an enemy of the marriage, if you understand how to build intimacy in the relationship, you understand how to make somebody feel heard, valued, and seen, but you don't know how to navigate the waters when the mother-in-law hates you or the best friend thinks you're a narcissist and you have past restraining orders and there's lawyers. If you don't know how to navigate that, right now, if you're in a divorce case and you think being nice to your wife in the divorce case and doing what's normal and splitting the assets 50% and letting her keep her retirement, put in the comments if that's you. And I'm here to tell you, you're going to run out of time if you don't take action steps and get somebody that's been there, that knows how to identify what you're doing wrong and how you pivot into doing that right. And here's the thing, we're going to be fully transparent. And I haven't even decided what we're going to name this YouTube video. I actually think we're going to name this YouTube video, My Client Whose Marriage Wasn't Restored, because I want to be fully transparent about it. Is the goal 100% to restore the marriages when you come into the program? It absolutely is. But for this reason, also, I'll share this. In my first marriage, I got that far to the finish line. That far to the finish line to restoring the marriage. The reason that I didn't restore the marriage, I ran out of time. I ran out of time. 100%, I ran out of time. If you go back and you look at the other side of that, in your case, David, I would say from my experience, I've never met your ex-wife. I don't know her. But for any man right now that's driving down the freeway, hypothetically, figuratively speaking, spiritually speaking, he's driving down the freeway and he's been waiting on the magical unicorn to run out in front of his car, and he's going to absorb that in his car, and he's going to wake up the next day and the wife is in the bed. Would you say that guy is in danger of running out of time if he doesn't do something quickly?
He's going to run out of time, and he's also going to make things work for himself.
So how does that look like for you, in hopes that this can encourage somebody else to put time on their side for a change?
So the sooner you get started in all aspects of this, whether that's preparing yourself for the divorce, because even, like you talk about, you can restore the marriage after the divorce, and how the divorce goes can dictate that. But preparing yourself for the divorce, or shifting yourself to move forward in a way that's going to make you attractive to your wife again. There's a ton of things that you got to do on a pace, but you got to do it at a pace. And you can't do everything overnight once you decide, like, I'll wait till the last minute and do it. No, you have to do it on pace. And the sooner you do it, the better you can pace it out and make the progress done in the timeline it's supposed to be done. Because there's a lot of things that, like you say, you can open up the communication in 7 days. And before you move on to the next step, that's because you kind of had to soften things up in certain aspects of the relationship in order to move on to the next step, or it wouldn't work. That next step would just be seen as resistance again. So you got to do things on a pace. The sooner you do it, the more long your timeline is to work with those things that require time.
Let me ask you, in your scenario, your marriage was not restored. It's not going to be restored. Did you run out of time?
If I'd have started sooner, probably could have been restored. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that 100% as well. And the goal of the program, I say on YouTube, the goal of the program is marriage restoration. At the end of the day, it's not marriage restoration. That's not the goal of the program. I mean, here's actually what the program is. The program, if we were to name it what it is, which wouldn't convert very well from a marketing perspective, it's a men's leadership program that causes you to understand how to communicate with those in your life that you love, to build intimacy, to make the other people feel heard, valued, and seen, and empowered to become who they're supposed to be. And the side effect of that medicine is it positions you in new leadership. I know right away for you, you took on new employment, your income went up. You now have a vision to take on roles that could potentially, if all of that works out the way that I think it's going to work out for you, affect the entire world, because a new vision has been opened up for you. Or maybe it was always in your heart, but now you actually believe that this can come to reality. The Bible says, so as a man thinketh is he. And I think that scripture is talking about mankind. I think the same thing applies to women. I often share this on YouTube. Recently, about 10 days ago, a lady asked me, what do you do for a living on an airplane? And I know probably, do not put in the freaking comments. Denver, you've told this story 20 different ways. I'm on an airplane about once a week. So I'm always on an airplane. And I always start up a conversation because I love helping people. I literally wrote this lady a business plan on a flight from Little Rock to Atlanta before we landed. And I hope put her life on a trajectory that turns not only her life around, but the life of her husband and children, by showing them that the vision that they have can absolutely, it's freaking amazing. And the reason I bring that up is I give different answers when people say, what do you do for a living? Sometimes I say, I help men restore their marriages when their wife is checked out. She has no interest in working on it, because that's part of it. But where my heart really is I help women and children have the lives that they're supposed to have by putting the man that's in their life in a new leadership position to go where he's supposed to go. And that leads them to do the same thing. In my first marriage, I ran out of time. Now, well, Denver, if I get a divorce, I'm out of time? No. I mean, David, you've seen lots of students, about 30% of our students, they either get divorced in the first week or two in the program because the legal action is already in place, or they're divorced when they come into the program. We absolutely can restore a divorce with one exception. If she gets remarried, my goal is not to restore that. It's not in line with my ethics. I think God does recognize second divorces, even if they're not, or second marriages, even if they're not supposed to happen. I think it literally closes the door in official. I don't think a divorce breaks a covenant when somebody makes a covenant with their spouse and God. I don't think it ends it. I think if you're divorced, that woman is still your wife. When that woman is no longer your wife is when she remarries or you remarry. That severs the gut. There's a lot of debate on this. Is remarriage adultery? Most of the time, I think it is a single act of adultery. Why? Because you made a covenant with God in most cases that this is a lifelong commitment. When that covenant is severed, most of the time there's a single act of adultery. Well, Denver, is God walking in condemnation and judgment? It's not judgment. No, but God does want you to recognize that if you're going down the aisle twice, maybe you should wake up and stop seeing everything they did wrong and see, even if they did 90% of the things wrong, maybe they were an alcoholic, maybe they were a drug addict, maybe they sincerely were just a bad person, which is not always the case. And most of the time it's not, but sometimes it absolutely is the case. But with those things being said, was there something I did in that marriage that contributed as a stumbling block to cause them fall, to cause the marriage to fall? And that's not to condemn yourself, to hold yourself back. But what that is to acknowledge that and go repent of that and get that shit fixed. That way you don't repeat it in the next relationship. Hopefully the next relationship is with that existing spouse, a redo on that. But sometimes it's not always the case. In my case, in my first marriage, I ran out of time. Well, Jennifer, if you can help people restore their marriages when it's divorce, what do you mean you ran out of time? Sometimes there's obstacles. And for the sake of not condemning somebody else, I'm not going to say what it was, why I say I ran out of time, but there was an obstacle that came up after that divorce, which literally, biblically speaking, wouldn't even have made sense to have restored that marriage, if that makes sense, based on my values, based on my opinion. So for me, I chose to move forward out of that with what I had learned, which now today God is using that, because I almost figured it out in that one, but I didn't fully figure it out until years and years and years later when I'm facing divorce number 2. And that's when I realized in this marriage restoration, I will not run out of time. I will put time on my side. My wife, my current wife at that time, when she filed the divorce, she had a wall up. And I read scripture about a wall up. This was before ChatGPT. So I had to read a lot of books, and I read scripture around a wall up. And in the Bible, there's one example of the wall as being up, and God showed them the path to march around the city 7 times, and God brought the wall down. But the one thing he told them to do was around communication. The leader of that army that led that army around that wall, the commander gave them one instructions while they were marching. You know what it was? Don't say a word. You know why? 100% the reason he told them to do that was there's power of life and death in the tongue. All of my new students that I meet in the paid program called Divorce Stoppers, they're speaking death into the life they want, the future they want, and the relationship that they want. And I fully believe that when we speak death, that removes God's permission to work, because your words override God according to his own word. And so with that being said, you have the floor here. If there's a man watching this video right now, he's waiting on the magical unicorn. He didn't even know that's what he was doing until today. But now that he sees that, he's heard from me that I ran out of time. A 20-something year marriage ended because I ran out of time. I just ran out of time. In your case, a marriage ended because your wife got remarried. Like, there's no chance of reconciliation according to your values and beliefs. I know a lot of dumbasses out there called standing for their marriage. They're teaching the Bible out of context, saying, okay, well, eventually they'll divorce that spouse that God doesn't recognize and come back to you. To me, that is literally satanic advice. And it's absolutely contrary to the scripture. If there's a man out there that his wife is not remarried yet, but maybe he's running the risk that she'll get pregnant, that she will get remarried, that he's going to run out of time, he's feeling hopeless. He's given up on life, but he thinks he's going to wake up tomorrow after he hits that unicorn, and he's going to wake up and this nightmare is over. What would you tell that guy? And of course, we're soliciting for new members for the Divorce Stoppers program. If she has confirmation bias, which a lot of people, 10% of the people watching this, their wife has confirmation bias. If that's the 10%, they'll never restore their marriage watching YouTube videos because they'll run out of time. Because it's not enough to do the right things. You have to do them quickly. You got to put some speed on it, and you've got to do them in order consistently for the amount of time it takes for both of you to change, for you to change and for your leadership to change her. What would you say to that guy right now that if he don't change his life and get it back on track, he may never have a good life moving forward? He's thinking about ending it because he just doesn't have hope anymore. What would you tell that gentleman and why, David?
So a piece of advice I got one time that was very useful was it's not really the things you do that you end up regretting, it's the things you don't do. So if you don't take action now, you'll end up regretting it. And I can say that with 100% certainty.
Let me ask you one more question. I believe fully somebody that invests in their self, in the life that they want with their time and financially. The reason I bring this up is the Divorce Stoppers program is a high ticket coaching program. You got a guy right now watching this. He's thinking about checking out. He's aligning his actions with his feelings, and it's making things worse. He's running the risk that his wife is going to get pregnant with another man's baby, which a lot of people are in denial of that. But I can tell you 8 out of 10 times when you're in separation or divorce, she's at least talking to somebody emotionally. And I know that nobody wants to believe that because really, really, really good women do that. They do. Absolutely. But with that being said, you're running the risk that she's going to connect with somebody else in a way that could cause irreversible damage. She could get remarried. I experienced that in my first marriage. I ran out of time. You experienced that because the door shut when your ex-wife got remarried. What would you tell that guy whose life is going to hell in a handbasket, that he wants to get it back on track, knowing also that this is something that you don't necessarily take lightly? As a paid student in Divorce Stoppers program, if the wife has confirmation bias, he is never going to fix this watching YouTube videos. It's just not. And right now, probably 80% of the people that are watching this, she does not have confirmation bias. But if she does, they will run out of time before they figure it out. Because as you now understand what that is, you've got to put some speed on it. You've got to do everything that works to psychologically change her, to get her out of confirmation bias. You have to do it consistently for the amount of time that it takes to actually make the change. And you've got to do it exactly the correct way and land the plane in the correct field every single week during the process because you can't mess up. What would you tell that guy that doesn't even really fully understand confirmation bias? His relationship, his marriage, and his life is about to look radically different for the rest of his life if he doesn't put some speed on it and invest in his time and his finances to have the life that he wants.
Yeah. So I got some advice when I was younger that I've carried through my life that's been really useful. I guess there's a very small percentage that somebody could restore their marriage in this phase, but most likely not. And you're not going to regret the things you do at the end of your life. It's going to be the things you're going to look back on and say, damn, I wish I'd have done that. And if you don't do something and take action, then you're going to regret not trying, not putting the effort into it and going seeking professional help and trying to make it happen. So you gotta take action. Don't regret inaction.
If this is you and you know that you're running out of time and that you have a need for speed, David has just told you that in his scenario. David, let me ask you one last question. I said I asked you the last question, but I got one more question for you. Ultimately, the door's closed on that marriage for you. What would you tell a guy on the other side of this, knowing that you went through this process, you invested in your time, and you invested a significant amount in your finances to walk this journey? You didn't walk it alone. You walked it with me. You walked it with the other coaches. You walked it with other people that was in your shoes. What would you tell that guy on the other side of this? And you're that person that their marriage opportunity for restoration, the door was closed. Would you have still done this anyway, knowing what you know now?
This is something that a guy in that situation doesn't want to hear, but there's more to learn in this program than just fixing that one particular relationship. Yeah, that's the main goal, but all the things you get along the way will improve maybe your next relationship. Once again, I know you don't want to hear that, but that's the reality of the case. And B, that there's a lot of other things you can use in your daily life or your professional life that this stuff will help. So there's more to get out of it than just trying to fix the current relationship. 100% the primary goal. And I know you don't want to hear anything else other than that, but those are the other things that are to offer. And it definitely helps. Those things can help, even if the other stuff or the relationship doesn't work out.
Yeah. So would you say this is true or false? The tools that we taught you with the goal being to restore the marriage, the side effects of that medicine is what's opened your eyes to having and creating the future that you want for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Because now through this program, I've learned that just because the next pretty face and kind personality comes along doesn't mean she qualifies for wife material, right? There's a lot you learn about how to select a good wife in this program that is not just Instagram pictures and how she treats you on a nice date.
Yeah, that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And then in closing, how has your perspective on your life and your vision about your calling, has that changed at all? And if so, explain it.
Yeah, and it seems like every day I'm still adding to it, and maybe even chiseling some other things away, addition by subtraction. So it's still a process, and it probably always will be. And that's probably the best place to be in, is realizing that it's always a process, that you're going to keep figuring out things you want to do, and you're going to keep subtracting things you truly didn't have a passion for. So it's helped me to figure out where I want to go by constantly making those little adjustments left and right, and keeping on their straight course.
Do you believe in your heart that the investment that you made in your time and in your finances to walk this journey, did you get a greater return than what you invested?
Yeah, yeah. So far, yeah, and it's going to continue. As long as I keep those mental approaches and everything I do going forward. Having the community, and maybe just being able to send Marcel a message on a bad day, those things can kind of lift you up just enough to where you keep getting through and you keep having the motivation to push forward. And so those things
Yeah.
can really help you out in a bad time. I mean, let's be honest. There's a dark time that guys are going through when they're in this situation, and just that support alone is worth it.
Wow. And you're right. We don't really mention that too often on YouTube. So I appreciate you bringing that up because I think that's something that a lot of people need to hear that. If you haven't already done so, this is your last call. So right now, the decision that you make in the next 3 seconds could literally impact the rest of your life. If you know that you need to radically do something different, if you know after watching this video you have a need for speed, if you're ready to take the action step to put time on your side before that time runs out, scan the QR code on the left side of my screen to book a call, or go to the link in the description and the comments to book your strategy session call to take the first step to doing this. After you do that, if you want to go ahead and take the next first step while you're waiting on that call, scan the QR code on the screen to register for my free Marriage Return Masterclass. We're teaching that live 14 to 17 times this week. In that masterclass, I'm showing you the steps to take the first action step to turn this around, to identify, does your wife have confirmation bias, to turn the train that's going to hell, to take the first step to turn that back around by teaching you how to build intimacy through communication. And if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel, click the bell notification, and change it to all. Starting next week, we're going to start putting out 3 videos a week, and I want to make sure that you get notified of every single one of those. Put time on your side today. If you've already booked the call and you know that you're needing to do something else as well, I want you to watch this next video because it could be exactly where you're at.